Chapter 7. Fighting Contest to Find a Suitor. The 6 freaks of the Zhongnan and Gojing took the southeastern direction. The journey promised to be long. Many days passed before they even left the steppe. That day, they were not very far from Kalgan anymore. It was the first time that Gojing landed his feet on the Chinese soil. All was new to him, and he was full of enthusiasm. He loosened the bridle of his horse, that ran so quickly that the wind whistled to the ears of the young man, and the landscape changed so quickly before his amazed eyes. The little red horse galloped without interruption till the Black River. Then Gojing stopped in a hostel by the road, in order to wait for his masters. Seeing that, after this long race, the horse had sweated a lot, Gojing had mercy of him and took a handkerchief to wipe it. He was stunned then to see, on the handkerchief, traces of blood. Passing the hand on the neck, he withdrew it covered of blood. He almost burst into tears, blaming himself for not stopping his horse and take care of it. He was, therefore, the responsibility for its loss. He embraced the horse, making him 1,000 caresses. However, the animal seemed to be very healthy, without appearing to suffer from anything. Impatient to see his third sfu, so he may give some care to the horse, he didn't stop stretching the neck toward the road to see him as soon as possible. Suddenly, he heard a warbling tolling of bells. 4 camels of a snow-white color arrived at full speed on the road, each brought by an individual clothed in white. Gojing had grown in the desert, but he had never seen any as beautiful camels and could not stop himself from looking fixedly at them. Aged of about 20 years, the cameliers had all one face of fine lines and attractive, of a beauty that one rarely could see in Mongolia. They got down with agility of their settings to enter in the hostel. Gojing could not leave them off the eyes. One of the cameliers, embarrassed by the fixity of this look, blushed and lowered the head. Another, on the other hand, got in anger, little stun. "What do you have to look like that?" Gojing, taken on the fact, diverted the head with embarrassment. The newcomers whispered in a low voice and one heard them laugh. "Congratulations," seemed to say one among them. "You really hit that little stun." Gojing understood that one ridiculed him and felt all ashamed. The red to the cheeks, he wondered if he had to remain or leave when Han Baoju arrived on his stallion pursuit of wind. The young man hastened to tell to his sfu of his misadventure. "How is this possible?" wondered Han Baoju. He approached the horse, caressed it, examined its hands attentively, and exploded to laugh. "It is not blood," he says, "it is sweat." "Sweat?" stammers Gojing, speechless. "Red sweat? My small Jing, it is a horse to the sweat of blood, a rare beast and of an inestimable value." Gojing was in heaven to learn that his setting was not wounded. "Third Shifu," did he ask, "how sweat can it look like blood?" "I heard about it from my deceased Shifu, that it existed in the kingdom of Fergana Central Asia, shared today between Uzbekistan, the Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. In the territories of the west, celestial horses, whose sweat was red as blood. Its gallop looked like he was going to fly, and it could browse more 1,000 li per day. But it was a legend, no one ever saw one, and I didn't believe myself in it too much. However, here is that this legendary animal let himself be tamed by you." In the meantime, the other freaks had also arrived. Zhu Chong, whose learning was incomparable, said while nodding the head, "It is effectively an anecdote consigned in the historic memorials and in the dynastic history of the Huns, that the Emperor Han Wudi, having heard to speak of the horse to the sweat of blood, had sent an emissary in kingdom of Fergana with a full-size statue of the animal, all gold, and had asked to have one of it. However, the king of Fergana refused." "How did the emperor react?" asked for Gojing. "Did he give up on the horse?" Installed on another table, the cameliers in a blank, also stretched the ear to listen to the history. Zhu Chong took a sip of tea and said, "Third brothers, you are a famous horse feeder, do you know where the horse came from?" Han Baoju said, I have heard from the master that it was the copulation of family horse and the wild horse. Zhu Chong said. Yes, according to the history book, there is a mountain near Urshi City. There are wild horses on the mountain. They run fast, and they can't be captured. The people in Tawan country has a wonderful idea. In the spring evening, the 5-color mare is placed under the mountain. Mating with the mare, it is the legendary animal. Jinger, you little red horse, I am afraid that it is from the Tawan country. Hao Zhaoying said. The emperor didn't get the animal, didn't he give it up? Of course not, says Zhu Chong. He entered in a terrifying anger and invaded Fergana. To the term of a long and terrifying war, during which the kingdom was annihilated, he finally captured one of the famous horses, but at what price? At that moment, one heard to ring some bells, and 4 other individuals, also clothed in white, entered and sat down with their mates. Zhu Chong continued to talk. The Hanwha emperor thought that they not only didn't get the animal, but he also lost tens of thousands of soldiers. Was it not for the foreigners to look down on my great empire? So he ordered the 200,000 people, cattle and horses, countless, but also afraid of the lack of strength, but also captured the country's criminal shackles, matrilocal man, business people, all joined the army. The people were stunned. Also, he sealed 2 famous horse feeder to be big officials. One was for expelling, one for riding. 6th brothers, the Han dynasty focused heavily on agricultural and lightly on business. If you were born in that dynasty, you would fell on evil days, but 3rd brother could be an official, ha. Han Zhaoying asked. What crimes did matrilocal man commit? Zhu Chong said. If he is not a poor person, who is willing to be the matrilocal man? To force the expedition far, he was to bully the poor. Then Li Guangli took the army and besieged Tawan city for 40 days and killed Tawan generals and soldiers. The Dawan's dignitaries were afraid, and killed the king and sacrificed the animal. Li Guangli triumphed back to Beijing. The emperor was overjoyed, and Li got a title of Haoxihu, and the officers had their rewards. For these horses, we don't know how many people died in the world, how much money was spent. On the same day, the Hanwha banqueted ministers and made a song. It said only the dragon in the sky could turn into the horse. The 8 white people listened to his story, and couldn't help but turn their head and look at the little red horse outside the door. Their faces were full of envy. Zhu Chong said. The emperor didn't know the animal's robust was bred from the wild horse. Hanwha got the animal with the power of the country, but the animal did not mate with the wild horses on the mountains outside the Urshi city. After passing down for generations, it was not so good, and there's no red sweat on its body. After Zhu Chong finished the story, the 7 people talked about it and ate the noodles. The 8 cameliers didn't quit to whisper in a low voice. Kajener, whose hearing was especially fine, heard them distinctly, although the tables were relatively distant from each other. If one wants to go for it, said one of them, we need to do it right away. If he rides his horse again, we won't be able to catch him up. There are too many people here, retorted another. And he has some mates. If they dare to interfere, said a third, we only have to kill them all. How can these 8 individuals appear as cruel? Wondered Kajener, but he didn't let anything of it to appear and continued to swallow his dows greedily. We are going to offer this precious horse to the young master, said one of them. Mounted on such beast, his arrival in the Yanjing will be a lot more spectacular. No one will be talked as much as him, not even conceited persons like the immortal of the ginseng, or the virtuous supreme Lingzi. Kajener had heard to speak already of the virtuous supreme Lingzi. That was an eminent personality of the esoteric school of Tibet, known in the whole southwest for his so-called technique stamp of a big hand. On the other hand, he didn't know anything about the immortal of the ginseng. These last days, said another, we met on the road a lot of outlaws. These are all of the men of Peng Lianhu, called Butcher of the 1,000 Hands. They are probably going to the appointment in Yanjing. If they fall on this precious horse, do you believe that we will get another chance to get it? Ke Zhener froze. He knew that Peng Lian, who was a dangerous strip chief who raged in the region of the Hebei and Shaanxi. He had many henchmen under his orders and acted with cruelty. He had killed so many people that he had received the nickname of Butcher of the 1,000 Hands. Why, did he wonder, all these sinister outlaws are to meet in the capital? And from where did these 8 women came? These women continued to plot a low voice, deciding to lie in ambush on the road, outside of the township, in order to seize the horse of Go Jing. Then they chattered, talking of other business, of the kind it is you that the young master prefers, or the young master must be thinking about you now, etc. Ke Zhener raised the eyebrows, angry, but he could not close his ears, and he heard all in spite of him. If we offer the horse to the sweat of blood to the young master, did ask for one among them, what reward do you believe that he is going to give us? He is surely going to spend more nights with you, answered another while laughing. The first protested, sulky. They bickered while laughing. Be quiet, says one among them. Don't unveil our intentions, they don't seem to be that easy. The woman over there, says another in a low voice, carries a sword, she practices the martial arts for sure. And she is rather good looking. If she had 10 years less, the young master would certainly fall for her. Ke Zhener understood well that they were speaking of Han Zhaoying and felt even angrier. This young master of which they spoke can't be someone that advisable. The 8 women finished their meal, took their camels and left the hostel. After their departure, Ke Zhener asked Go Jing, Jing, what do you think of the gongfu of these 8 women? What women? Wondered Go Jing. They are disguised in men, explained Zhu Chong, but you didn't realize it, did you? Who knows the mount of the white camel? Asked Ke Zhener. No one had heard to speak of it. Ke informed them about the conversation that he had heard. The other freaks found that these shameless women didn't lack boldness, but their audacity to want to tackle someone stronger than them was something to laugh of. 2 among them, said Han Zhaoying, have a big nose and green eyes. They probably aren't Chinese. Effectively, confirmed Han Baozhu. And these entirely white camels only exist in the territories of the West. That they want to steal the horse, said Ke Zhener, that is not too serious. But they said that numerous dangerous personalities were going to a meeting in Yanjing. It must probably hide an important plot to harm the Song dynasty. It could even have disastrous consequences for our people. Since we fell in such a business, we cannot wash our hands of it. Certainly not, said Quan Jinfa, but the appointment of Jiaxing is near, we can't waste any time. They hesitated because it appeared impossible to reconcile the 2 missions. That Jing goes there first, says suddenly Nan Ziren. 4th brother wants to say, did decipher Han Zhaoying, that Jing must go alone in Jiaxing, and that we will join it once we will have solved this business in Yanjing? Nan Ziren nodded the head. It is true, says Zhu Chong, it is time that Jing travels a little alone to acquire some experience all by himself. The young man appeared very saddened to part away from his shifus. You are now big, reprimanded Ke Zhener. Don't behave like a child. You go and wait for us there, comforted Han Zhaoying. In less than 1 month, we will join you. The appointment of Jiaxing, said Zhu Chong, we didn't explain it in detail to you until now. Whatever it arrives, at the 24th day of the 3rd lunar month, at noon, you must imperatively be to the pavilion of the drunk immortals. Even if the sky was to fall on your head. Go Jing acquiesced. These 8 women want to steal your horse, continued Ke Zhener. Don't look for the fight, your horse is fast and they won't be able to catch you up. You have important things to attend to, avoid to embark in useless histories. If these women dare to cause any trouble, said Han Baozhu, the 7 freaks of the Jiangnan will stop them. Zhang Ashang had died more than 10 years ago, but the 6 always called themselves 7 freaks, never forgetting to associate their dead brother with all their actions. Go Jing, therefore, bid farewell to his teachers. They had witnessed his battle against the 4 demons of the Yellow River, and were not too greatly worried. The young man had proved that he knew to use the skills that had been taught to him. Therefore they let him leave alone. On one hand, the meeting of the outlaws in Yanjing worried them greatly, so that they could not make themselves lose interest in it. And on the other hand, a youngster always had to travel the Zhonghu alone, in order to learn lessons that no teacher could pass on. At the moment of parting, each made his last recommendations. As usual, when the 6 spoke after one another, Nanziren was the last one to express himself. "If you cannot defeat the enemy," he said, "flee." Knowing the dogged character of Gojing, he knew that he would prefer to die rather than to surrender. If he met a master, he would certainly fight to the bitter end, even at the risk of death. That was the reason Nanziren gave him this common-sense warning. "The martial arts have no limits," added Zhu Cheng. As the proverb says, for every peak, there is one yet higher, so for every man, there is one stronger. Whatever your power, you will always one day meet a foe stronger than you. A true man knows to retreat when necessary. When facing grave danger, it is necessary to contain one's impatience and anger. This what is meant by the adage, if one preserves the earth and its forests, one does not fear to lack firewood. It is not therefore not cowardly to take good advice. When the enemy is too numerous and that you cannot face them there, it is especially necessary to avoid being too reckless. Keep in mind Force Fuss advice. Gojing agreed and kowtowed to his teachers, before mounting his horse to head for the south. He felt great sadness at parting from his masters, with whom had lived every day for the 10 last years, so that the tears flowed down his face. He thought also of his mother, whom he had left alone in the desert. Of course, she did not lack for anything, since Genghis Khan and Tului had promised to look after her, but his loneliness weighed upon him nonetheless, and he grieved for her. After traveling about 10 li, he arrived in a mountainous region. The road wound in the bottom of a valley dominated by craggy slopes sprinkled by strange boulders. As it was the first time that he had confronted the outside world, he could not help but feel a little apprehensive at the sight of this threatening landscape. One hand on the hilt of his sword, he paused, then while smiling, if third Shifu saw me thus, trembling and terrified, he would certainly make fun of me. The path climbed the mountain flank, becoming more and more narrow and serpentine. After a turn, he suddenly became aware of a mass of white shapes in front of him. 4 women clothed in white, mounted on white camels, blocked the road. Gojing halted and pulled up the reins of his horse. From a distance, he shouted, "Excuse me. Please, may I pass?" The 4 women laughed. "Little guy," replied one of them. "What do you fear? Why don't you come over? We won't eat you." Red-faced, Gojing did not know what to do. Could he amicably negotiate passage, or was it necessary to rush and force the pass by arms? "Your horse seems not a bad animal," said another woman. "Come, let me have a look at him." She spoke to him as to a little child. Gojing felt anger rise within him. But the layout of the terrain worried him. To his right rose a craggy cliff, to the left there was a mist-drowned precipice, whose bottom could not be seen. "Eldest Shifu," he said to himself, "has given me good advice not to seek trouble. If I ride swiftly at them, those girls will be well obliged to let me pass." He lashed his reins, pressed with his thighs, and the red horse sped forward like an arrow. Sword in hand, Gojing cried, "Listen, you people! Let me pass. If someone is jostled and falls into the precipice, it won't be my fault." In an eye blink, he arrived in front of the 4 women. A woman had leaped down from their camel and attempted to seize the bridle of the horse. But, with a whinny, the horse leaped over the camels. Gojing had the impression that he was flying in the clouds as he landed behind his opponents, who were just as surprised as him. This move surprised not only the 4 women but also Gojing. Hearing them scream out their anger, he turned and saw the flash of 2 projectiles flying towards him. This being his first travels in the Zhonghu, he had taken heed of the prudent recommendations of his masters. Worried that the missiles were poisoned, he did not wish to seize them with his bare hand. He waved his leather cap, and gathered them, intercepting their flight. "Well done!" cried two of the women. "Pretty gongfu." Go Jing dipped his head and saw, inside his cap, two silver darts tipped with extremely sharp fishbones, deadly weapons. He felt disturbed and upset. "There is no ill will between us," he said to himself. "You covet only my horse, and here you are ready to injure me mortally." He placed the missiles in his pouch, and fearing to meet the four other women, he loosened his horse's reins. It galloped like the wind, and in less than an hour, had covered 80 li. The assailants had to be ambushed farther on the road, but it was passed so quickly that they did not have the time to stop it. After a brief rest, he continued on. Before night fell again, he had arrived in Kalgan, sure that he had left behind those following. Kalgan, the crossroads of commerce between the south and the north, was a small but very lively city, where the trade of the region was centered, especially the fur trade. Holding his red horse by the reins, Go Jing glanced right and left with great curiosity. Never had he seen a town of such importance, so that everything appeared strange and novel to him. Arriving in front of a large restaurant, he felt the pangs of hunger. He tied up his horse in front of the door and went in. Once seated at a table, he ordered a dish of beef, with 2 pancakes, and being of a good appetite, he ate in the Mongol manner, winding the meat in the pancake and taking bites out of it. While he treated himself, he suddenly heard a tumult at the door of the inn. Fearing for his mount, he rushed to the doorway. The little red horse was quietly eating his fodder, but 2 inn boys were scolding a young, slender boy, clothed in rags. Aged about 15 or 16 years, on his head he wore an old leather hat with many holes. His face and hands were all dirty, so much so that one could not distinguish his features clearly. He held a big bun in his hand and laughed stupidly, revealing 2 rows of beautiful white teeth that seemed out of place in comparison with his general appearance. His black, very lively eyes shone with intensity. "Hey!" screamed one of the boys. "Get lost." "Sure," said the young man, "since you want me to go, I'll go." He turned on his heel, but the other inn boy interrupted, "Leave the bun." He did so, passed back the bun, but it was spattered with the tracks of dirty fingers and could no longer be sold. The inn boy, furious, launched a blow with his fist, that the other ducked. Go Jing felt pity for him, thinking that he had to be hungry, and interposed himself. "There's no need for violence," he said. "Put that on my account." He obtained the bun and gave it to the young man, who took it, but said, "This bun is no good." "Poor thing, wait. Here, for you." He threw the bun to a small skinny dog that started to devour it. "What a waste!" swore the inn boy, giving a dog such a good bun. Go Jing was taken aback, for he had believed that the boy had suffered from hunger. He returned to his table to continue his meal. Now, the young man followed him inside the establishment and stayed there, looking at him fixedly. Go Jing felt a little bothered, then he asked, "Do you want to eat here, too?" "Gladly so," replied the young man with a laugh. "Exactly, I was bored all alone and I've been looking for a buddy." He had a Jiangnan accent, and its familiarity delighted Go Jing. In fact, his mother was from Linan, in Zhejiang province, and the odd 6 all came from Jiaxing. He had, therefore, since childhood, been immersed in the accent of the Jiangnan. The young boy seated himself at the table. Go Jing ordered a cover of more to the waiter. He saw the rags and dirtiness of the new guest. His appearance was not very nice. It was necessary to call him several times before he brought over a bowl and plate, dragging his feet. "You take me for a pauper," said the young boy, "unworthy to eat here? Phew! Even if you serve your finest dishes, who knows whether they might be to my taste?" "Ah yes?" said the waiter coldly. "We will assuredly follow your orders, sir." The problem is that we don't know if anyone will pay. Whatever the dishes that I order, the boy demanded of Gojing, will you treat me? Of course, replied Gojing, who then ordered the waiter, quickly, will you cut up a plate of roast beef and a half plate of mutton liver? For him, roast beef and mutton liver constituted the ultimate in delicacies. Do you drink wine? He asked the boy. Wait, the other replied. Don't rush into the meat. Let us begin first with fruit. Waiter. Bring us first 4 dry fruit, 4 fresh fruit, 2 salted sweetened ones, 4 preserved fruit and honey. The waiter was shocked, not expecting such orders. Which fruit and sweets would you wish, sir? He inquired. In this little establishment, in this pathetic little town, says the boy, I imagine it's impossible for you to do anything great. Then, one will content oneself with little. The 4 dry fruit are lakis, longans, jujubes to the steamed and ginkgos. For the expenses, you will choose seasonal fruits. For the salted sweetened, perfumed cherries and plums to the filaments of ginger, but I don't know if one can find some here. As for the preserved fruit and honey, you will bring perfumed oranguettes to the rose, preserved grapes, fishing lamels to sugar freezes, and pear slices. This knowledge of culinary matters impressed the waiter, who no longer dared to act superior. There is no fresh fish or fresh shrimp here, to accompany the wine, continued the boy, so I will be content with 8 average dishes. What would you desire, sir? Asked the waiter. Of course, said the boy with a sigh. If one does not explain all the tiniest details, you would be incapable of doing anything. Here are the 8 dishes: steamed pheasant, fried duck's feet, a soup of chicken tongues, deer stomach to rice wine, beef ribs with chives, rabbit in filament to the chrysanthemum, thigh of wild boar stir-fried, pork feet and ginger vinegar. I'm choosing simple dishes only, it's not worth speaking of more sophisticated dishes. The waiter's mouth gaped. These 8 dishes, he said, are rather expensive. For the duck feet and the chicken tongue soup, we will require a lot of poultry. This gentleman is paying, responded the boy while pointing at Gojing. Do you believe that he does not have the means? The waiter saw that Gojing carried a sable coat of great value. Even if you have no means of payment, he said to himself, this coat will suffice to cover the expenditures. Then he demanded, are those all? You will also bring, the boy said, 12 more dishes to accompany the rice and 8 different desserts. And it will go on like that. The waiter didn't dare to ask details concerning the dishes, fearing the boy would order dishes he could not provide. He went to the kitchen telling to prepare the best. Which wine do the gentlemen wish to drink? He returned to ask. We have white wine 10 years of age. What would you say of 2 horns to start? Why not? Said the boy. One continued with. A little later the waiter brought fruits and cookies. Gojing tasted each plate and marveled at all those delicious things he had never known. The boy spoke much, telling about the local customs and habits, describing famous characters and famous anecdotes about the country of the south. Gojing was fascinated by his refined eloquence and his immense knowledge. Gojing's second Shifu was a well-read man and a great scholar, but Gojing, who had devoted all his time and energy to martial arts, had only learned from Zhu Chong, during their rare free time, some basic characters. It seemed to him now that this young boy was as cultivated as second Shifu, and he was filled with wonder. I believe, he thought, what seems just a poor beggar was, in reality, a well-read man of immense culture. The men in China are definitely quite different from those in Mongolia. Half an hour later, the dishes were ready. It was necessary to join 2 large tables together to be able to serve them all. The young boy drank very little and ate in the same way, being satisfied with pickings of the less spiced dishes. Suddenly, he called the waiter and thundered, this rice wine is 5 years old. How do you dare to serve it with the food? Your palate is really very refined. The manager came to beg for pardon. Please excuse us. In fact, our humble establishment did not have it. it was necessary to borrow some from the nearest larger restaurant, the House of Eternal Celebration. In general, one does not find fresh wine in Kelgan. The young boy made a gesture to return it and resumed his conversation with Go Jing again, asking him 1,000 questions about the desert and Mongolia. As his Shifus had reminded him to be discreet, in order not to reveal his identity, he was content to tell anecdotes on hunting for hares and wolves, the shootings of eagles, horse races, etc. The boy listened with fascination, applauding the sharpest accounts and often bursting into fresh and childish laughter. Go Jing had lived all his life in the desert. He had certainly tied a sincere friendship with Tului and Huazeng. But Temujin, who loved his youngest son very much, often kept his son near him, so that Tului didn't have much time to play around. As for Huazeng, she had a strong character and often quarreled with Go Jing, who felt reluctant to do everything she wanted. Although they always ended reconciled, the relation wasn't easy. However, everything was different with this young boy. They were conversing during eating, and Go Jing, without knowing why, felt a joy he never experienced before. Usually, he spoke little and expressed himself with difficulty. One really needed to pose him with questions, forcing him to answer painfully. Han Xiaoying nicely made fun of him by saying that he was the preferred disciple of Force Shifu, because he had adopted Nanziren's motto "Silence is golden." This time, he surprisingly could speak non-stop, not hiding anything of his life, except his martial arts training and what was related to Temujin, telling even all silly things and his stupidities. He spoke glibly, and at a certain moment, he forgot himself and seized the left hand of his interlocutor,